This is the ESPN Aussie Hoops Hour podcast. Kane and Olgun coming to you minutes after the final buzzer in Perth. The Wildcats are through. It was a seeding qualifier, I believe it's called. Olgun, 122-105 was the final. In the end, in the fourth quarter, they blew this game open. We're going to talk about that. We're going to look at Sydney and Adelaide. Of course, a part of that is Xavier Cooks and the latest in this situation here that continues to develop. And also, Olgun, you were at the Gazeys, and we'll talk about it a little bit later. But I know you're a high flyer. These are the type of events that you like to chuck a tuxedo on and hang around the high flyers of the league. How was it?
I had a blue suit on. I did not put a tuxedo on. I had my top button was undone the entire night. It was a very enjoyable evening. I think there's like 3 times a year where everyone's in the same space. You got the Blitz Hoops Fest and then the awards night. So it's cool to have everyone in the one building, be able to sort of just speak to everybody. We don't get that very often. And I say everybody, the Wildcats weren't there, the Phoenix weren't there because they had to prepare for today's game. But otherwise, a very enjoyable evening. I don't know what they showed on the broadcast or on the stream, so I don't know what you saw, but there was an aerial show. So the NBL spent money on that. They spent money on a cellist and a saxophone, and they were called Saxon Cello. That was the name. It was SXN Cello as one word. And then there was like a wedding sort of band, wedding singer type thing, who were sort of mimicking the Black Eyed Peas. And then also some awards were given out in between. A lot of awards were rushed in between a lot of things to sort of fill the pageantry. But overall, a very good night. Some surprises of awards, which we'll get into. Were there any surprises from your end?
Yes, we will get to that a little bit later. I'm not sure it was the top billing awards, but yes, I was a little bit surprised. But kudos to Kelsey Brown and Leonard Copeland at that event. They made it to Perth to broadcast this game just a few minutes ago. So shout out to those two guys. But let's talk about the Perth Wildcats. It's interesting. They, as I mentioned, 122-105. They blow this game wide open in the fourth quarter. And if you just asked me coming in who I thought I was going to win, it would be Perth. And the big reason for that is I felt that the depth was better. I felt they had more firepower offensively. And the Phoenix just felt like they were going to be a little bit short without Derek Walton Jr. I think the game played out that way. But overall, very, very strange basketball. 71 free throw attempts through the first 3 quarters. So you look based just on the scoreboard, if you looked at it and said both teams are in the 90s at the end of the third quarter, you're like, man, this must be high quality, big buckets, up and down basketball. But it was a grind. It was a slog to watch. It wasn't fun to watch. It was just 2 teams walking to the free throw line over and over and over again. And interestingly, when the game did actually break open in the fourth quarter, only 6 free throw attempts combined for both teams. That's when the Wildcats blew it open.
Yeah, so I want to credit whoever came up with this fact at Ozboomer's Facts on Twitter, who pointed out 71 total free throws was the league high, and that was around 13 game between the Hawks and Kings. We had 71 free throws attempts at the end of the third quarter of this game, right?
Yeah,
just like not an enjoyable game to watch. Unfortunately, I think every second possession there was a foul call. It was a lot of like ticky-tack stuff. It was guys driving to the rim, rebound, contests. Things that you can generally let it go, and you feel like once you get to, post the regular season, the game should tighten up a little bit. It's played more in the half court. It's a bit more physical. It just wasn't that sort of game, unfortunately, and it made for a really tough watch, especially because of who was playing. You have your Bryce Cotton and some of the, I'd say, the aggressive bigs that Perth has, and then you have Sobey and Geordie Hunter and these guys on the other end. So you have guys who are going to draw fouls, and then the rest rewarded everybody. I don't think this was swayed one way or another. They rewarded everyone. And then the thing that a lot of coaches complained about all season long is the difference between the officiating from quarter to quarter or from half to half. And I think we saw that going into the fourth quarter too. But at the end of the day, I agree with you. It was Perth's offensive firepower getting it done. I think it was more the Phoenix's lack of firepower, struggling in the fourth quarter. And I think that allowed Perth to get boards, push the pace, get stuff in transition, semi-transition, and they were able to blow the game wide open.
There was 2 sections in this game where it was free flowing and it didn't feel like it was a parade to the free throw line. It was the first 5 minutes of the game when the Wildcats led 20-4, and then it was the fourth quarter. So those were the 2 periods of the game where it wasn't necessarily like that, and Perth had too much. And I think a big part of it was Keanu Pinder. How many times have we discussed it through the season where we've said, like, look, this is the ceiling for this Perth team. If you get an aggressive Keanu Pinder, this Wildcats team is not just a threat to make it to the semi-final series, which they have now against Melbourne United. But by the way, either way tonight, we were going to walk away with a really fun matchup. It was either going to be a throwdown series or you're going to get Melbourne and Perth. These teams don't like each other. The fans don't like each other. But Pinder early in this game was a physical force. Geordie Hunter was not able to slow him down. And then Hunter got in foul trouble and just had nothing went right for Hunter tonight. There was he was the only guy on the floor that couldn't get a foul call. And just a few little things didn't go his way. So when he went off the floor and then you're playing Matt Hurt at the 5 and Malik Lewis at the 4, then that's when Pinder was like, I know that you can't do anything for me. 35 points and 11 rebounds. His best game of the season. He was the best player on the floor. And when he is, then Perth looked like they can win the whole thing.
So just for those of you who haven't seen this line, Keanu Pinder, 35 points, 11 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, 2 blocks. He was 11 of 13 from the field, 3 of 3 from 3, and he played 24 and a half minutes. So ultra efficient, ultra consistent on the floor. And like you said, once he sees Matt Hurt as the guy who's guarding him under the rim, Matt Hurt hasn't been a terrific defender all season long. So that was a license for Pinder to attack the rim and to do what he does. You're not going to get this every game from Keanu Pinder. If you can get spurts of this, then I think the Wildcats will be in a really good place. I think it engages him defensively. Their front court was just really imposing from Keanu Pinder, again, realizing he is the most athletic, twitchiest guy in the league, and then Christian Doolittle being a physical presence, the one of the most physical presences we have in the league. So those two guys did a number on them, and then once the game opened up a bit in the fourth, it allowed Bryce Cotton, it allowed Ben Henschel to really find their footing a bit. The perimeter shooting got there for the Wildcats once they established what they did inside. I thought the Phoenix did what they wanted to do defensively, which was load up on Bryce Cotton, get it out of his hands. But against this sort of team, if someone like Keanu Pinder gets going, then it's really difficult because once you give him a head of steam when he's catching things in the short roll or getting those outlets, it's very difficult to stop this Wildcats team.
Well, they are unique in that way, and Adelaide can do this a little bit with Montrezl Harrell, and they might have Isaac Humphries on the floor or Jarrell Martin, but Perth actually have 2 big men that can dominate physically, but they kind of do it in different ways. So Pinder is a guy that will get on the runway and get downhill and run it down your throat, whereas Doolittle, which we saw in the second quarter, to your point, again, it was against the small guys. Wieskamp was a part of this as well. Doolittle was like, Wieskamp, you seriously trying to guard me on the block? Like, there is nothing you can do. And he was backing him under the basket and getting to the rim. The only reason Doolittle didn't have 30 points in this game was because of foul trouble. He was in foul trouble in the second quarter and then in the second half as well, but he still finished with 20 points and 11 rebounds in 22 minutes. So we've discussed all season the differences between teams that are going big and going small. And I still think that what we're going to learn when we walk out of this season is that it still pays to have big men. You can't go small. And Sydney now, they're going to be playing without Xavier Cooks, but I think they're in a whole world of trouble going into this Adelaide matchup because they don't have the big men. Illawarra is the best team in the league. They got Sam Frolin leading the way. Melbourne is second with Rob Lowe and Marcus Lee. And then you got this Perth Wildcats team that is a little bit different. It's not like they got 7-footers out there, but they play big and they play around the basket and they physically dominate you and they ask you questions defensively and get your key players in foul trouble. So this was a physically dominant win, and this Phoenix team that has actually been based on defense could not hold up against this Wildcats team.
Yeah, and the Wildcats, they don't have sort of bruising bigs. They've got positional size, though.
Yeah.
Where Keanu's big, Christian Doolittle's big, Dylan Windler's big, Ben Henschel's tall. Like, all of this stuff matters. And then off the bench, they bring in Hiram Harris, Jesse Wagstaff, Ethan Almanza. They're throwing a ton of size at you. They're throwing physicality at you. And I think, again, Bryce Cotton deserves all the praise of being the MVP and being the guy who has the attention of the entire defense, right? And that was the Phoenix's game plan for all the attention at Bryce, and obviously it didn't pay off. But they did what they wanted to do. But this Wildcats team around Bryce is really physical. That they generally like to move the ball, and it's filled with shooters this year. which it didn't have in previous seasons. So you have Ben Henschel, who we've seen this in previous games too, where end of the third, start of the fourth, Ben Henschel hits 1, 2, 3 threes, and the game sort of breaks open. Dylan Windler then finds his footing a little bit. Dylan Windler was almost invisible in this game. I barely noticed him on the offensive end.
Yeah.
But he is someone who we know can rattle off a bunch of threes in a row as well. So it's very difficult to play the style of defense where you just get the ball at Bryce Cotton's hands, because they do have guys. Christian Doolittle makes good decisions. Keanu Pinder can get downhill. They have shooters. So it's a very difficult team to guard. Whether they can defend at a high level consistently, we'll see when they get into a series if they can do that. I didn't think Perth was good at all defensively. They found a little pocket in the fourth quarter where they were fine, but I think that was just the Phoenix running out of steam. Whether they can defend consistently against United, who's not a great offensive team, but they're a team that's made it that far, they're going to be tough to stop. We'll see if Perth can do that, but their physicality will be an issue for whoever they come up against.
Yeah, so Perth, you pointed to it, the three-pointers, it wasn't really a factor through the first three quarters. It was a lot of physical stuff. It was in the paint. It was getting to the free throw line, but Henschel hits a couple. Bryce Cotton has Foxwell on skates, hits the step back, and by that point, it's game over. So they were able to break it open. I'm curious with the Phoenix now. They get a few days to respond. I believe they said on the broadcast that game's going to be Sunday. You probably know that. Against Adelaide or Sydney. So they'll be at home. I would bet that they'll be hoping that Sydney wins, because I think they like that matchup size-wise. I would be concerned what Adelaide could do if they get through, but we'll talk about that game a little bit later. One other note I had before we move on to anything else here, and Perth were just awesome, or a couple of notes from this game, and then you come back with anything you've got. So 19 seconds into this game, there's a challenge. And I'm already sitting there going, and I've spoken about this before, I don't understand what the point of challenging an out-of-bounds call that isn't a foul on the first possession of the game, that isn't even clear. So you are putting at risk that you're just blowing a timeout for absolutely no reason. And my thing with challenges is either save it for later on in the game in absolute high-leverage moments, or save one of your key players from foul trouble. Like, why are you challenging a 50-50 ball in the first 19 seconds of the game? Because I'm surprised the broadcast didn't bring it up. But a few minutes later, it's 20-4. The Wildcats are running absolutely wild, and they're saying, oh, they're going to call a timeout. They're going to call a timeout. And I'm like, they're not going to call a timeout because he's only got one left for the half. So he actually put the team in a worse position there for no reason. I thought it was bizarre. I'd be curious to know what the mentality is for him to challenge. Like, is he trying to tell these guys, hey, we're all in, you tell me this, I support you? I don't know. It's just bizarre to me.
It's so firstly, Foxwell has to be better, man. You have to know that you touched it, and you don't, even if you don't know if it came off you last, you have to know you touched it. You have to put your
isn't there a pecking order though, Olgun? There's going to be a pecking order with who can demand challenges, right?
In the bit of find that pecking order.
I don't think so. Matt Hurt is probably one of the guys that has that privilege.
Matt Hurt is not someone I would not trust. Matt Hurt with a coach.
But he's a star player. You listen to the stars.
Yeah, he's the biggest talker on that team. He's throwing these ones left on center. But
he is.
But no, that decision aside, I think a lot of people do get lost in the fact that he's going to burn his challenge. I don't care. Challenge doesn't matter. The timeout matters. Because we've seen this a lot. We've seen this in situations when coaches want to call those very emotional timeouts 2 minutes into a game because I need to send a message to my team. That's all well and good. But then they go on a run and you need to burn your second timeout in the first quarter. And then you have no timeouts in the second for either a tactical reason to rest your players or because the other team's gone on a run. You can't do that anymore. So again, you have two timeouts in the first half. You can't burn them on emotional things like that. That you like, and Josh King is smarter than that too. Like he definitely would have realized that in right after and realized, damn, I can't do that. But I agree. In high pressure moments like this, you can't be doing an emotional thing like that.
Well, it was also, he could look back now and say, well, it didn't really impact us, and it probably didn't because they were down 20-4. Then Angus Glover comes in, goes absolutely crazy. And by the way, we should give a hat to Angus Glover, 25 points in this game, 20 in the first half. He was the reason they got back into it. So the Phoenix score 4 points in the first 5 minutes of this game. Then they score 63 points in the next 15, and it was started by Angus Glover. So in the end, they were back on level terms by the end of the first quarter. So perhaps that timeout didn't hurt. But you guarantee if they're down 20-4, he would have called a timeout at that point in time to try and slow down the momentum of the Wildcats. The other point I've got is, what was up with the crowd, man? What have you seen or read anything or why this wasn't a sellout? I don't really know where the venue is in proximity to Perth, but I don't care whether it's a Tuesday night. We've seen them pack RAC Arena out on any day of the week.
So the venue is, I went to the venue for Hoops Fest. It's 10 minutes west of the city, east of the city. As in, if you're driving like from the middle of the city to RAC, I think you just keep driving like 10 more minutes and you're there. So it's like relatively close. I went out there for Hoops Fest. They played a bunch of games there. It's, what was it, 4,000 or 5,000 seat arena. I don't know what the capacity was. I don't know if they threw the number out there. It's probably somewhere. But there were clearly empty seats. Every time someone would shoot a free throw, the sort of top half of that section was empty. Yeah. And again, in a vacuum, that's whatever, right? It wasn't a win or go home game. It wasn't, this might be the last time we see this team play, right? There would have been another opportunity. But the fact that there was so much outrage and uproar about the fact that we can't get RAC Arena because we need all of our 10,000 members to sit in this 13,500 seat arena. And then we go to this small arena and you can't even pack that out. Unfortunately, you lose the license to then complain about something like that ever again. Because what's RAC Arena going to say? Like, oh, you're not going to sell it out anyway. In hindsight, RAC Arena made a really good business decision by letting Kylie Minogue prepare for her concert so she could put together a high-level 10 out of 10 concert so people will go to RAC Arena again. And someone, I'm in a group chat, and it was reminded that Game 3 of the semis last year in Perth, 7,500 people in RAC Arena. That's half of the capacity. So maybe I don't know, man. I don't. The Red Army's they're different cats out there.
Careful, man. You might have to go out there in a couple of weeks to a Melbourne Perth game.
I tempered what I said. I said I don't know, man. I don't know what's going on there, but you got to fill out an arena like that, especially if you're going to be outraged at this RAC Arena thing. Come on.
Very bizarre, but I will say, actually, just from the broadcast perspective and what sounded like the atmosphere in there, it was great. You know, that was one of my concerns. You got a playoff game, you go from this big-time arena, one of the best in the league, to a small venue that hasn't hosted an NBL game for over a decade. I was worried what it was going to look like. Sometimes they're a little sketchy in those smaller venues that they try out, but I thought it was great. Everything looked fantastic.
They're always loud. They're always loud and they're always on top of you. It's why State Basketball Center is really good. It's why the My State Bank Arena is good. These small arenas are good. They're on top of you. The Wynn Entertainment Center is the best arena I've been in this season because the fans are on top of you. And I think that's because it's small. So that was an advantage of a kind.
All right. You got anything else from this game or shall we move on?
From this game, not too much. As far as my notes, I just wrote both teams were relatively bad defensively. If you're a team that struggles offensively in stretches, you're going to struggle against this Perth Wildcats team because their defense is subpar. If you miss a shot, they're able to get rebounds. All five guys can push, and they could really just put points down your throat, and they can score a bunch of points in small stretches. So that's something that is this United team. It's not been an amazing offensive team. They've had their moments where they're not great. They need to make sure that they get back. Because if and you trust this team to get back, but if they don't get back, then it's very tough to see United competing with Perth just with the firepower they have.
I like it. We're going to have plenty of time to preview that game because we had a little break and that series is not starting for quite a while. So we will get to Perth and Melbourne, and it's nice if you're a Wildcats fan. You just get to put your feet up now and relax and say, we got the job done. We don't have to worry about this win or go home game in a couple of days' time against either Adelaide or Sydney. So Adelaide or Sydney, let's talk about this now. But let's start with Xavier Cooks. The statement came out from Basketball Australia just before I went to sleep over here. What can you tell us about the report? I don't have the facts in front of me here, so I'll leave it to you. I know you're all over this.
So let me just read the statement from Basketball Australia. Yeah. They write, a mandatory provisional suspension, effective immediately, has been imposed on Sydney Kings player Xavier Cooks following notification to him by Sport Integrity Australia of an adverse analytical finding and a potential violation of the Australian National Anti-Doping Policy. So from what we understand, there was a positive test result from one of these doping agencies that regularly test NBL players. He returned a positive result, and so there was a game against the Illawarra Hawks. It was the last regular season game for the Sydney Kings for both teams, and about 2 hours before the game, there was no word that anyone was going to be out of that game from the Sydney Kings. It was all systems go. And then it was about an hour before the game where word started to trickle that Xavier Cooks might miss this game because of personal reasons. Now, it seems like that late scratch may be related to this thing. And then, yeah, it had been very quiet around the Sydney Kings, around the NBL. No one was saying anything. And then we got this announcement today. So he is suspended, effective immediately. So that means that he will miss Thursday's playing game against Adelaide 36ers. It would surprise me if he's going to be available beyond that, but we don't know. I'll stress that we don't know that. This isn't indefinite. It's just he's currently suspended and he'll miss that game on Thursday.
It's interesting. We've seen a little bit of this, and clearly it's a shame. We don't know the background or what's going down, or even what the test, the substance was, or whatnot. So it's kind of hard to comment on it. But we've seen a little bit of this, I guess, in other codes in Australia. But I can't really remember basketball this happening. So obviously the timing of this couldn't be worse for the Sydney Kings. So they're going to be without Xavier Cooks, and I guess there's not too much else to say about that. But you talk about the anchor of this defense, the Sydney Kings team that plays small. We saw that they were really dominated against the Hawks, and a big reason for that was that there was no Xavier Cooks. First possession of the game, Sam Froling takes it at Cam Oliver, gets his first foul on him. Oliver's in foul trouble after that. Jacob Spurgeon's playing big minutes, and no disrespect, but that ain't going to cut it against this Adelaide team and Montrezl Harrell and even Isaac Humphrey. So in terms of the actual game or what it means, I don't know what it means long-term for Xavier Cooks, but in terms of this game, it feels like a catastrophic blow to this Sydney team, even if they are playing the flakiest team in the league in the Adelaide 36ers.
Yeah, so two things, and the last thing I'll say on the Cooks thing is I just stress for everyone not to jump to conclusions. Based on everything, we all hear things on background. I would stress don't jump to conclusions on what you think this substance is or anything like that. Let the process play out. Let the facts come to the fore. Again, just trust that everything will come to the fore and don't jump to conclusions there. That's the first thing. The second thing is there was a sense that the Kings were preparing to be without Xavier Cooks during that game against the Illawarra Hawks because we saw Jason Spurgeon get some minutes. And when we asked about that sort of stuff to Gorge in the post-game press conference, he said, we're probably going to play Adelaide in the play-in, and they're big, and we need to prepare Jason Spurgeon to potentially play some minutes there. Yeah. That brings me to the question that a lot of people around the league are asking, and this was the benefit of me being out here in Melbourne for this NBL Awards night, is that everyone's out here and everyone's having discussions, and we're talking about things on and off the court. Everyone's having a really good time, and everyone's looking ahead to this Sydney versus Adelaide matchup, and the question is, what does Sydney do now that Xavier Cooks isn't going to play? Do you do you trust Cam Oliver completely, lean into Jason Spurgeon and see what you can do there? That's one frame of thought. The other frame of thought, and I think the box that I sit in, is what sorts of players do the Sydney Kings have? What is their point of difference with the 36ers? I think they have a ton of athletic wings. I think they can play small ball. I think they can junk it up defensively, play really janky. They can get in the lanes. They can be really disruptive, and they can try to push the ball. I think that's what the Sydney Kings should try to do. Try not to let Adelaide's defense with Isaac Humphries in the middle set up against your smaller team anyway. If you're going to be small, lean into going small. Play Tui at the 4, play Tui at the 5. Play Quat and Tui together at the 4 and 5. Junk it up defensively, push the pace, get a lot of threes up. Don't let Adelaide get into their defense, which isn't great anyway. But I think they should lean into the small ball stuff. I don't know how you feel. It seems mixed around the league. But I think lean into what you're good at. Don't try to pretend to be something you're not.
Well, they can't. Yeah, I don't think they have an option. And I don't know whether you can have any confidence going into this game that you're even going to be able to play Cam Oliver 25 to 30 minutes, because I don't know whether he'll survive with the foul stuff on the defensive end. So, look, one thing we do know with this Adelaide team is they'll give up points. And as much as Montrezl Harrell looks like he's a lock to have a 35 and 15 game, he'll give them up down the other end. And if you have got guys that are small and can push the tempo, Harrell's not going to get back on defense based on what we've seen this year. So you might be able to get out and score a whole bunch of points. But I am just concerned because Cooks, even though you look at it and he gets you around 15, 16 points a game, so it's you don't see him as a guy that is a dominant offensive force, but he kind of makes it easier for everyone else in that offense and within that offense. And my concern would be that this Kings team just turns into a 3-point shooting team because they don't have that guy that's actually making everything tick and forcing them to do other things. We've seen it before. So who knows? Maybe that's how the Kings win the game. They shoot 53s. But we have seen before when Cooks isn't on the floor, sometimes they can get a little ragged. I would suspect that at this point in time, you almost just say, Quat and I just start and play 30 minutes tonight, see if you can get us 30 points. And then to your point, you put Tui out there, Jalen Adams will be there, and Cam Oliver obviously starts, and you go from there. But I don't know. Yeah, either way, if the Kings win this game, I don't think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I think both teams maybe push 100 points. Do the Kings have enough? I'm not sure. I will say that what we have seen from Jalen Adams, basically every time the 36ers have played the Kings, there's been a lot of talk about Kendrick Davis because Adelaide have won the game. So there's been a lot of talk about Kendrick Davis. Oh, he had 30 points, whatever. Jalen Adams has had a couple of 40 pieces on the 36ers from memory. So he's going to not have any fears about this matchup against Adelaide scoring the ball as well. And the biggest question you have for Adelaide, everything tells you they should win. But we've been here before. And they normally disappoint when you think that they're going to do something nice. Like that's the facts. That anytime you think this team is going to go do something nice, they fail. And I saw Peter Hawley today on the Overtime Show, and he's already talking about, oh man, look at the path of this Adelaide team. They get Sydney, then they can go play a Phoenix team, and then they get Illawarra. They've swept them. They could be in the grand final. And it's like I don't know, man. There's no reason in the world you could believe that that's going to be the case, but the talent continues to tantalize.
Yeah. The talent is doing a really good job this season of masking general impact, which has been quite frustrating. And we saw it in this game where Matt Hurt is an outstanding offensive player. Like, my God, he's so good. His ability to absorb contact and finish through that is so impressive. He had 3 N1s in a row, and that's not the first time we've seen him do that this season. But he's also respectfully a cone on the other end. And so he's someone who gets blown by a lot. He gets finished over a lot. And that's just the reality of what you have to give up. We always talk about how good imports are. And it's, all right, cool, they're great here, but why aren't they in the NBA? Everyone has their deficiency. And with Matt Hurt, it's defensive. With Montrezl Harrell, there's some emotional stuff that comes with him. And so some NBA teams are hesitant, obviously. He's obviously super talented offensively, but he's not very good defensively. And he hasn't been all season. Kendrick Davis and Dejan Vasiljevic, then there's no resistance there from a defensive standpoint. Now, whether Jalen Adams can do that against either of those guys with no Xavier Cooks, the threat of Xavier Cooks as a roller, as a short roller, someone who is going to make good decisions out of the short roll, his ability to sort of flip screens as well and work with Jalen Adams in those on balls, they're missing that, right? An Adams-Cooks pick and roll is not the same as an Adams-Oliver pick and roll. It's an Adams-Oliver pick and roll is nowhere near what Adams and Cooks are. So that's going to be an issue for this team. So I think that has a chance to affect what Jalen Adams does. But your point still stands. This is an Adelaide team that has been mercurial all season long because they haven't been a great defensive team consistently, and they can get selfish offensively. We've spoken about how emotional they can be. So again, even if you can sort of paint a picture and say, what a pathway, do you trust them? No. In the same way that last week we said we don't really trust the Sydney Kings either, just because they haven't given us reason to. Give us reason to trust you, and we will. Unfortunately, Adelaide hasn't done that, and that's just the reality of it. I can trust them to win this game. They've demonstrated that before, but beyond this, I'm not going to jump to conclusions at this point because their team is somewhat talented.
Yeah, I would. Last one on that on the offense, and look, either way, one of these teams is going to be put out of their misery this week because you talk about probably the two most, and I know they're still alive, so there's still a chance that something crazy could happen here for both of these teams. You come from 5-6 to win the title, who knows? They've been the two most disappointing teams in the league this year. Make no mistake, comfortably, in my opinion. And again, when I say put out of their misery, the fans will be put out of their misery because I feel like they've been hanging on to the hope all season long. And for one of them, it's going to come to a close. I would put
It does feel like on that point, it does feel like we've been trying to convince ourselves all season long that both of these teams are really, really good and they'll put it together, and they just haven't yet. So at some point, we as like analysts and fans, we just got to let it go. I think that's it. But you were going to talk about Tilly, please.
I think we've jumped off him recently. I mean, to be fair, like 2 weeks ago, Adelaide finally got me after 4 months. They finally sucked me in, and then that's why I'm off them, because they disappointed me immediately. But the Kings, I've been questioned. I mean, the stat I keep bringing up, they just haven't bet good teams. They just have not beaten good teams since September. So there's no reason to trust them at this point. And now, obviously, there's no Cooks there as well. Yeah, I would just put Alex Tui. We see, Xavier Cooks. I know he plays some 5 and 4, but I would still call it like a small pick and roll when he's out there. He's not a big guy. He's an athletic guy. I would just put Tui in those positions. Make Montrezl Harrell work in small pick and roll actions, get Isaac Humphries in there. I don't know whether this is a game that Humphries only plays 15 to 20 minutes. We'll see, depending on if Sydney can dictate the tempo and what they're doing offensively. I would just put those big guys and Davis or DJ in the pick and roll and try and get downhill, get them in foul trouble and see how you go. But Tui could be an X factor in this game. He's had some big games through the season, and I think he probably looms as one of the more important players in this game. You got anything else before we move on to the awards? I need to know more about this awards night. I know you were mingling. There was all sorts of stories and scoops getting dragged up at Crown. Was it that Crown?
No, it wasn't a Crown. It was at the centerpiece. Last one on the Adelaide game. From what I understand, Jerome Martin will more than likely play in this game. He sat out a couple of weeks with, I believe, a calf injury, where I think they've been managing that. But from what I understand, he will play in this game. So Adelaide's rotation jumps from 6.5 to like 7.5. So that's really cool. But yeah, what do you want to know about the awards night? It was a very fun night. We're at the centerpiece, which is in Olympic Park. Yes. Man, I have stories. I can't say them all, but just for context, the centerpiece. It's Rod Laver Arena. The centerpiece is right next to it. And Rod Laver Arena was where Drake was playing, and so you had all of us well dressed NBL folk, and then you just had a host, a plethora of like 14 to 18-year-old children. Girls and boys just scattered across Melbourne Park listening to Drake.
Yeah, look, tough week for Drake. It's fair to say. But anyway, we move on. Bryce Cotton, 5 MVPs. Hopefully not the last. I'll leave it at that. There's not much more to say about him. He was dominant all season long. I don't think this was an MVP race. I commented on your Twitter, but I'll say it again. When you vote for the NBA MVP and there's 30 teams in the NBA, they just ask for your top 5. Just give us a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's all we need. Even though there's 30 teams, 3 times the players that you've got in the NBL, more than that, 3 or 4 times 15 players on the roster. We just need your 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's all we're asking. Why the hell is the NBL asking for 15 nominations for MVP? So they're asking for more than 1 nomination per team. Please just explain who came up with this idea and why it still stands. It's just ridiculous.
So again, for those who don't know the process, there is a panel of experts, of which I was a member of. There's 6 of us.
Yes, and
we were asked to give.
By the way, can I just quickly? I just jump in. When you write these stories, I can't tell whether it's comedy or it's like, is it like journalistic like principles? I'm not sure. I don't do much writing anymore, as you know. When you put in, you'll say, here were the experts: Derek Rucker, Andrew Gaze, Olgun Illich. That's me. Is that comedy or what's going on?
I put this author because that is the more sensible way to put that in a story for ESPN. All right, we're a very serious publication. We were asked to put forward 15 nominations for 15. MVP and then 5 for each other award. All of the coaches were nominated, so we weren't asked to nominate anyone there. And so 15. I wrote in the story as well. Once I got to like 10 or 11 or 12,
tough.
It was at that point. It's on there. The pool grows where it's like you're deciding between 2 dudes who are like fringe second team guys, and it's like it doesn't matter at that point with regard to like this game that we're playing. And so 15 names. The NBL then sort of collated all of those and whittled it down to 12, and those 12 are then given to the head coaches, captains. And assistant coaches did not vote for MVP. The ultimate MVP vote was head coaches, captains, and then us panel of experts were asked to then vote again. So then we put a vote forward for MVP. And now that it's out there, I voted for Bryce Cotton.
Wow. We would assume that would be the case.
The brave man I am, I voted for Bryce Cotton, Bryce Jerome Cotton.
I would say it's not the biggest thing to get all worked up about, but I just find it bizarre. We can just narrow it down. Like, it's just such a pointless exercise that they got you guys doing. I didn't really see any other surprises. Justin Tatum, congratulations to him. He's been coaching a dominant team really since he came into the league last year. He could have won it last year, which was why that was my main argument against Josh King, that Tatum didn't get it last year for doing a similar thing there. But obviously, first top of the standings finish in club history, so Tatum deserved that. I wasn't surprised by Shea Ely. Again, just put in a simple, you got to play 60% of games, 50% of games. Like, Will Magnay should not have been a finalist. And I know that he wasn't going to win the award.
I did not nominate him. I do not know who nominated him. I don't know why he was in there.
Like, it's not, and this might, I don't know how much the players care about this. But I would imagine being nominated, even if you don't win the award, is still a cool thing. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the players don't care about that. But I just think that there could have been other guys that played the whole season that were deserving. No one's questioning what Will Magnay can do defensively, but he just didn't play. So I just don't think it's a good look when he's in your finalists, your three finalists, because what you're telling us is that he was in the top three defenders of the league this year, and that's false.
Yeah, I don't think Will Magnay cares that he's nominated. He's achieved enough, so he'll be okay. But Will Magnay, I think, was an easy pawn for the head coaches, assistant coaches, and captains on both the Illawarra Hawks and Melbourne United, who wanted their guy to win, either Shea Ely or Wani Swaka. And so you could just vote for Will Magnay because not everyone's going to vote for Will Magnay. Yeah, so if you're Dean Vickerman, Will Magnay, what a defensive year, give him that. That's a vote that Wani Swaka isn't getting. So I'm not saying he did that. We don't know who voted for who. But that's like a way that these guys can manipulate the voting system in order to get their guy to win, which makes it a broadly flawed system. But it came up with reasonable outcomes this time, so it's whatever.
Again, maybe not the biggest deal in the world, but I just think in general, you just make it easier. If you've got a games limit, I would say it should be more than 50%, but 50% at least should be the absolute borderline for that. But anyway, Shea Ely, obviously a dominant defender in the league. Did you see anything with the All-NBL team? So All-NBL first team, Kendrick Davis, Matt Hurt, Bryce Cotton, Trey Kell, Tyler Harvey. So two Illawarra Hawks guards get in there. We know it's positionless. Matt Hurt, the big in this team here. And then you got four guards. And then on the second team, Chris Golding, Montrezl Harrell, Casey Prather. Again, a great story there. Sam Froling and Xavier Cooks. Anything that kind of piqued your interest there?
So I was surprised that both Illawarra Hawks guards made the first team. I'm not mad at it. I'm actually quite happy with it. But I'm surprised because I thought those two and Froling would sort of take too many votes away from each other, that they might all be second team or one of them might miss it completely. But I am happy with the outcome there. I noted on the night that it's the first time in league history that the All-NBL first team was All-American. We've never had that in the history of the NBL, where no local player, no Australian, no Kiwi made this team. So I found that somewhat interesting. I don't know if that speaks to the level of the imports or to the lack of talent lack of local talent, or the fact that a lot of local talent has gone elsewhere. Maybe it's that. And then the second team, the two sort of omissions. So the guys who maybe had an argument. So Parker Jackson Cartwright, he missed a bunch of games. I think he sort of removed himself from the public consciousness when he got suspended, and then the Breakers started losing a ton of games. But his numbers would have dictated being in that conversation. And then Jalen Adams was another one where you look at just his numbers; they were really impressive for a team that was in the top six, the top 5 team. And so, could you put him in there over a Casey Prather or a Montrezl Harrell? Two guys on losing teams, and you could give or take a couple of points that they have over him. That there's an argument there, but maybe people point to the consistency or lack of consistency of Jalen Adams. They were the two that probably missed out, but I'm not mad at either of these teams. Maybe Chris Golding has a case for first team, but he did miss a bunch of games too, and he attacks his dominance is sort of in spurts these days. And so again, maybe it's just people just don't put that much stock into that.
Yeah, I didn't. you could have made a case for maybe switching some of the guys, but I didn't really feel any type of way about any of the guys that missed. To be totally honest, I thought that was the right 10 guys. I think they did a good job there. So congrats to all those guys. It is interesting that you have 3 Illawarra Hawks players in those 2 All NBL teams, because we've discussed this a little bit. There wasn't an Illawarra Hawk as a finalist for MVP, but you got 3 guys in the All NBL team. So it just again points to the depth and the star power of that Illawarra Hawks team. So that was pretty cool to see them recognized there. And as we already mentioned, Justin Tatum was there as well.
They remind me of the Cavs a little bit, where like I think like Kenny Atkinson will win Coach of the Year and or thereabouts. And it's also like no one's like an MVP candidate, but they're an outstanding team. And it's like Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley and even Jared Allen. So they have these high level dudes, but they sort of take away from each other. But it's because they're building together and they're winning games. So there's like a corollary. There's a lot of similarities between those 2 teams, I think. And I'm glad that Tyler Harvey and Trey Hill were recognized as first team guys. I think that was the right decision. I would have had Cooks somewhere in there, but it is what it is.
Tyrell Harrison, most improved player, he had a big season, and it does lead me to one award that, again, I'm not here to say.
Complain, bro.
I would never want to discredit people that are winning these awards. It's a largely positive note. And this is an award that I think any fan really cares about too much, to be totally honest, but Executive of the Year was interesting to me. The Brisbane Bullets CEO, Malcolm Watts, won the Executive of the Year. The Bullets, not close to playoff contention. And when I say playoff contention, I'm talking play-in contention. So we're talking about not even in the top 6 in a 10-team league. Interesting. But am I the only one that's interested in this?
Okay, so the Executive of the Year award is voted on by the other executives, and then I think there's like a group of NBL executives who cast a vote too. Mal is a largely likable guy. I think a lot of people around the league like him. They can look at the Brisbane Bullets, and they built a facility, which I've been to. It's solid. It's a good facility, where they have their own court that they now practice in, and they have a weights gym, and they operate the office staff operate out of the top floor of that. So, like, they built that. They moved stadiums. They did that relatively successfully. They don't really fill it out that much, but, like, the move was successful, so maybe that was the thing. He just did a lot of proactive things. That's the argument for him. The argument against him is that their team is currently under review by, like, an external auditor because of just so they can gauge some of the potential issues that are going on there. So, winning Executive of the Year while, like, the entity that you are overseeing is under an external review is that they're 2 opposing things, I think.
Was there, I don't know if you've got them in front of you there. Was there finalists for Executive of the Year as well? No,
there are never finalists. They just give it out. And it's also, I don't know who puts forward the nomination from each team, but it's like one person from each team. So Mal Watts was the nominee for Brisbane, like Chris Pongrass is the Sydney one. I believe Stu Taggart was the nominee from the Illawarra Hawks, not Matt Campbell. So that's why I feel like they should just have a basketball decision-making award. Because the other stuff, it just feels like executives just shaking each other's hands. And that's my sensible way of putting that. I just have a feeling that we should just have a basketball decision-making award. And so, for example, United doesn't have a basketball decision-maker. It's Dean Vickerman. Let Dean Vickerman be the guy there, or just have the team name be there. I don't know, but I don't know how many people around the league care that, like, wow, like this guy got a great sponsor for the back of their shorts. Like we must reward them. I don't know if the fans care about that. A basketball jam award, I think, would be cool.
What about Tommy Vandervoos? I would nominate him. He's climbed the ranks.
So there was a year.
He's climbed the ranks so high that this guy is basically the CEO of Melbourne United. So let's give him the award.
I mean, he's got a leaded position. He's the CMO. That's terrific. He was once the random media guy. He was the media guy that I dealt with. But as in, there was one time where Mark Boydie, you might see him at United games. He's wearing the big headset. He he won Executive of the Year one year, a few years ago. So again, these guys, the sort of executives, just like that hover around teams, they win this award too. So like, congrats to Mal Watts. But I understand some of the reservations that some people have.
Yeah, no, I'm happy for him. I actually would have, I would have voted Tommy Greer. Now it would have been an interesting one because he has decided to move on. But you look at this Phoenix roster, and they've reshaped the roster. They made the big call to move on from a coach early in the season. They got the right guy in. Phoenix, if you talk about basketball turnarounds and bringing guys in, and now see what it looks like for the future, but. That was a pretty remarkable turnaround there for the Phoenix. That's probably the path I would have gone down there, or the Perth Wildcats for everything they've been able to do and filling out that roster depth-wise as well. But anyway, as I said, I'm not sure how many people are still listening because I don't know if Executive of the Year is really the content that people want to hear, Ox.
If Matt Campbell was nominated for the Hawks, there's probably an argument there, I guess. Just the way they built their roster, inserted Justin Tatum, great. What did you think, real quick, on Next Gen? Taron Armstrong walked away from this night without an award. He wasn't in the finals for Most Improved. He was my Most Improved player. He was my number one. He was my number one for Next Gen too. Now, I'm not mad that Tyra Harrison won it. I think he fits the spirit of that award. I'm not mad that Alex Tui won Next Gen because I think he fits the spirit of that award, a 20-year-old who's making a two-way impact for a winning team. I think a lot of teams around the league put stock into that, put stock in the fact that his draft stock is improving. So I think they saw all those things and figured that's what a next-gen player is. But do you have any reservations about Taron Armstrong walking away from the centerpiece empty-handed?
No, not really, because firstly, most improved, I always feel this way when guys are so young. It's like you should improve. That should be the natural improvement. I like most improved for older guys like a Tyrell Harrison that we've seen for years and hasn't been able to get healthy. Then he was dominant in stretches this year. So I like it for the older guys that have been able to get involved. I think Pinder won it again, a guy that had been around. Did Jack McVeigh win it one year? There we go. I might be making it up. I'm not sure if McVeigh was in there anyway. But those are the types of guys that make those big leaps. There's always one or two that could potentially be in the mix. And the other thing I'd say for Taron Armstrong, and his best was great, but he was a little bit banged up through the season. He missed some games. And then I think that probably hampered his consistency through the season. Not saying that Alex Tui's been dominant every single game, and it's clearly easier when you're playing on a better team with more talented guys. So I don't think the situation in Cairns to run the point guard is easy for a guy as young as Taron Armstrong. But I'm not too concerned about that. I think it fits what the award should be. I think it should be a local award, and I'm happy with Tui, I think.
Yeah. A lot of the awards ended up following the sort of spirit of the award sort of sentiment, which I do broadly appreciate. Two things from this night very quickly before we go. One of the funniest things I saw was it was toward the end of like the evening, as far as like the televised portion of the evening, and Montrezl Harrell, there was word that started to trickle around that he just wanted to get to Drake. And if you guys did not see him on stage, to accept his All-NBA second team award, because just prior to that, I believe he had left the building and said, "Hey Kendrick, if I win anything, can you go get it? I'm going to Drake." So Montrez just went to Drake mid NBL awards. Kendrick had to awkwardly go up and accept the award, and then he went up and accepted his own award, All-NBA first team too. But yeah, Montrez lost the ability to go to Drake early. That's one thing, and the other thing is obviously I chat with everyone when I'm out there. You hear everything. There's like a real sense that we're going to get a hell of a coaching carousel of some sort this off season, and I'm talking potentially 3 or 4 vacancies that need to be filled. So that's something I think is worth keeping an eye on as we get to the end of this season and the start of the off season. Feels like there's a potential for a lot of movement in the head coaching ranks.
That is very, very interesting. We'll see what comes to that over the next few weeks. Last one for me. Did Taco Fall really wear a t-shirt? What's going on, man?
Okay, Montrezl Harrell wore a t-shirt. Montrezl Harrell he had not worn Adelaide 36's merchandise all season long. He turns up to the black tie event wearing an Adelaide 36ers training top in like a million chains. And it looked fine, right? Hendrik Davis also wore a shirt. Tucker wore a shirt. The black tie is just for the executives and us media folk to look pretty, right? For the players.
Put a check. Put a check, no.
It's a mixture of, I got this yesterday from politics or from caliber, or I got this 10 years ago from Target, and I've been recycling this one suit forever and ever because I don't wear a suit. And then you have Isaac Humphries and Derek Rucker who get a specifically tailored suit for this event. So you've got different sorts of people going to these things.
D-Ruck, don't worry. He likes to look sharp. He's just about to put Men's Club out of business,
at all,
I think.
D-Ruck looks sharp at all times. He puts us all to shame. I hate it. I hate him for it.
Well, Men's Club, the fine company, they're about to go under because they're giving up too many free suits. So, Derek, you might have to just dip into the back pocket, my friend, and give this business some financial support. All right, let's wrap it up. This was the ESPN Aussie Hoops Hour podcast. Derek wouldn't have lasted through the Executive of the Year chat, so it's fine. You can say whatever at this point in time. All right, Thursday night, we got Adelaide and the Sydney Kings. We're going to see who's going to survive. As I said, which team's going to get put out of their misery. Olgun, you're going to be on Nothing But Net Aussie Hoops Thursday night, so we'll be on before that game. Andrew Bogut's going to be on the show as well. So there's plenty of news going around. We might have some more to bring to the table on Thursday night. Check it out on ESPN. That's going to do it. It was a fun start to the postseason. We'll see what the next few days bring. We'll speak to you all next time.